This is a gentleman that actually is the visionary for Hope for Prisoners. He calls himself the janitor, but we call him Mr. Jon Ponder. Please come up.
Listen, I'm going to keep you guys long. I'm going to ask you to remain standing, not for me, but for the two people I'm going to introduce you to. And let me tell you the reason why I'm going to ask you guys to remain standing. You know all the work that we're doing trying to reacclimate and get back into society and forget about our past and move forward? Well, these two individuals, last legislative session up in Carson City, they went to work. They had their boots on the ground in the areas of criminal justice reform and just undoing some things that had been done to people from our segment of the population, right? How many people know that we have our rights restored back to vote, right? How many people are excited about that, right? I get very, very, very excited about that because, for so long we've sat on the sidelines and we complain about things, right? The way people are doing things. But now that we have the opportunity to participate in that process is very, very exciting, right? There's been some things with record sealing that was just, this happened and it has been really, really phenomenal. So the two individuals I'm going to introduce you to right now, they are giants and some of the greatest leaders in our state, specifically centered around what it is that they're going to talk to you about today, that criminal justice, restorative justice, restoring rights to vote. So if you guys would please put your hands together. Wait, let me say both their names. The awesome, incredible Assemblywoman Dina Neal and Assemblyman William McCurdy. Please give it up to them.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
How are we doing? I need a little bit more energy. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, that's what I'm talking about. First of all, thank you for allowing us to be with you this evening. And let's give another round of applause to Jon Ponder for all of his work. I am William McCurdy II. I was born right here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I come from District 6, which covers some of the city of Las Vegas and also North Las Vegas. Some of you may know it as the historic West Las Vegas area, which covers the 95 freeway north to Cheyenne, Belmont on the east side, west to Decatur. So everything in that area is my assembly district. You are looking at someone who is a former high school dropout, a teenage father, someone who overcame many obstacles in my community, from drug addiction and affliction to heavy gun violence. But more importantly, you're looking at someone who overcame the odds just like many of you. Amen. Someone who has much life left and many opportunities to present that goodness that was inside of me to the rest of the world. So with that, I look forward to a fruitful discussion talking about some of the legislation that we passed during the 80th legislative session, which we just completed in June. And I will now turn it over to my colleague. She is my front, back, side to side. I mean, when she gets it done, you're looking for, someone to fight with you. Not fight with you. Call Assemblywoman Dina Neal.
All right, well, good evening. I'm Assemblywoman Dina Neal. I represent District 7. I've been in the legislature now, I'm going on almost 10 years. And so, yeah, right? It's a long time. So my district is literally right next to Assemblyman McCurdy. I have District 7, so it's like Cary to Craig, and then I go all the way down to Lamb, and then I catch the top part up at Decatur. But like he said, this was a good session. Last session we didn't get a lot of things through. We attempted, and then this session we were actually able to move a lot of legislation forward. And so we definitely want to share that with you. After we explain it, we want to do some questions and answer, how do we use this? How does this apply to us? he's gonna lay out some things, but I want you guys to get more active in the process, because you're free, right? You might be working on some steps, but you are free. And so I want you, there are moments in this process that are happening right now where I feel like your voice matters within criminal justice reform that is moving forward. And so I'm gonna address some of that, and then also some other bills. So we have some different things to discuss. But so I guess he's telling me I'm gonna kick this off. I wanted him to start, but since Mr. Ponder discussed AB 431, this is probably the most prominent, because the AG, Attorney General Ford, has been taking this on. This was the bill that gave the right to vote back to felons who have been freed. So if you are no longer serving parole, you are off probation, it is automatically restored. All you have to do is go to the county clerk and literally go in and say, I am eligible to get my rights restored, and you literally fill out the card. They might ask you for a license, because me and William went through the process where the first 2 individuals got their rights restored about a month ago. And
July 1st?
yeah, it was literally July 1st, the day the bill became effective. And so basically it's a simple go in, fill out the registration, so you need to know your address. They're gonna ask you for the license, because there's certain information that you need to put on. And then you rip off the card, a person signs it, and then a couple of weeks later you're gonna get your notice that says you are eligible to vote in any election, state, city, presidential, it's all yours. And so that's powerful, right? Because whenever you want to have a say, in this process, right, at the state level for judges, you get to cast your ballot. I know you were like, yeah, okay, but that's real though.
Yeah.
Because you know more than anything, most judges go through the process and we don't know a lot about them. But you get to vote in all of those elections. As soon as you go and register, you get to go and cast your ballot. You know that the biggest race is coming up is November 2020, right? That's the presidential. We're gonna have state senate races. We're gonna have state assembly races. And I don't think there's any council seats up, but County Commission is going to be up in 2020. So your Clark County Commission, that's very important, because it's 7 who are pretty much making decisions and policies countywide. So tuck that under your belt, go get registered. It is a simple process. It'll take you less than 10 minutes. And so I'll let Assemblyman McCurdy discuss the next one.
So how many of those who are aware of this new legislation have signed up to register to vote? Okay. So we're going to change that. We're going to make sure that we bring the voter registration forms for you to get registered to vote. We have to make sure that we exercise our collective voice. We have a say in the electoral process. Assemblywoman Neal spoke to, the judges, but we also have a district attorney races that's going to be coming up within the next couple of years. That matters, big time. So we need to make sure that we have someone that reflects our values. So I'm going to speak briefly to Assembly Bill 192, and I'll give a little bit of background. In the late 70s, early 80s, there was this little project called the War on Drugs. We know that this had a negative impact on communities of color, specifically in those communities, the Black and brown communities. We are overrepresented during that time frame, and moving forward, we knew that people were being incarcerated for having drug addiction. We know that people were being incarcerated for being caught with less than an ounce of marijuana. And we have some people that are still sitting there today for a crime that is now legal here in the state of Nevada. So I felt, and we felt as a legislative body, that it was important and imperative that we address this issue because in 2016, the state of Nevada's voters made a decision to legalize medicinal and recreational marijuana and tax it like alcohol. That was a progressive step as a state, but while we were making progress, we left a lot of people behind. So what we did is we brought forward a bill that would address just that. Now, last legislative session in 2017, I brought a bill that says that anyone who has ever been convicted of a crime, of an ounce or less, convicted of a crime of an ounce or less, should have the ability to have that record vacated and sealed because it is now legally permissible. That bill made it through both chambers of the legislature, both the Assembly House and the Senate House. But when it got to the governor's desk in 2017 of June, it was vetoed. Now that was an opportunity to either leave it alone and let it go, or actually double down on it, reevaluate the policy and bring it back. So we decided collectively as a state, and I decided as the lead sponsor on the bill, that we're going to take it a step further. And the legislation says that anytime there is any crime that is later decriminalized, like marijuana, anyone who has been convicted of the old crime before it was decriminalized should have that record sealed and destroyed, and their rights automatically restored. And I can report to you that has been signed into law. So there are many obstacles that come into play with these types of crimes and these types of convictions. It hinders your right, your ability to gain gainful employment. It affects housing. And literally, it doesn't allow you to move forward with your life. So we addressed that, we changed the law, and your legislators went to work for you, went to work for the state, and we delivered on that because that's the right thing to do. Another bill that we looked at was Assembly Bill 356. So what we know is that in Nevada, there has been a total of 14 exonerations here in the state, and the combined time lost for those folks who were wrongfully convicted of a crime that they did not commit was a total of 175 years lost of their life. In the United States, there have been a total of 2,400 individuals who have been exonerated for crimes that they did not commit, with a total of 19,000 years lost. Now, as a state, we had a statute that says anytime there's an individual that wants to present evidence, they have a total, the statute of limitation is 2 years. You have 2 years to present new non-DNA evidence if you are looking to challenge the conviction. 2 years. But in looking and doing research, most studies say that it takes a total of about 9 years to gather the new evidence that would exonerate you and actually prove that you're factually innocent. So what we did as a state is we said that we're going to remove the 2-year statute of limitations and allow for the ability to present new non-DNA evidence, period. Which will ultimately help for you to prove, for those folks who are maintaining their innocence, to prove that they are indeed factually innocent. And as a state, we also said that you will be compensated for being wrongfully accused. So if you did 1 to 10 years and you were later exonerated, you would get $50,000 a year for every year that you were wrongfully incarcerated. If those individuals were incarcerated for 10 to 20 years, they will get $75,000 a year for each year that they were incarcerated, wrongfully incarcerated. And if an individual did 20 years or more, they're going to get $100,000 a year for every year that they were wrongfully incarcerated. Why? Because if we did it wrong as a state, we should stand up and we should make right on the wrongs that were done, and we should provide justice to those who were wrongfully incarcerated. This bill has been coined the DeMarlo Berry bill. DeMarlo Berry is a brother that spent 23 years behind bars for a crime he did not commit. What's more upsetting about this case is that even when there was new evidence provided, he still had to wait 3 years to have that heard. So we will make sure that when these things come up, we immediately address them, we go through the judicial process, and we provide compensation to those who are wrongfully convicted, and they have their rights restored, they have their records sealed, and they reintegrate back into society and be positive contributors to society. That is what we did around Assembly Bill 267 and 356, coined as the DeMarlo Berry bill. So we're going to tag team this thing up. So now Assemblywoman Neal is going to talk to a few more pieces of policy that we passed.
So I want to travel back to the marijuana offenses, because there was another bill that's a companion bill to AB 192, and it was AB 132. So when he talked about employment, right, and having a prior conviction or use of marijuana, well, basically the lawful, now it's lawful, the lawful use of marijuana, that I passed a bill, or I got William and another assembly person signed on to it. It was very controversial. Basically, it prevents any business from discriminating against you for the lawful use of recreation. So before, when you are a prospective employee, pre-employment, they cannot use the fact that you have a lawfully used recreational marijuana, because we already have protections around medical. They cannot deny you employment. It was a big deal. There are some caveats for safety, because I had to do some things in order to get the bill out to make the first step. But ultimately, the whole purpose was, if you're going to be selling to our residents, you cannot turn around and deny them access to a job. That was my focus, right? If you're we were selling at about a tune of $42 million a year marijuana in the state. And so it didn't make any sense that on one end you could say, well, now it's lawful, but you can't work here because we drug screened you and we found marijuana in your system. Right. Now that cannot be the case. If you get hired and they drug screen you, because that was a huge conversation, well, we'll just drug screen them and hire them, and then we'll fire them. You have the ability to go and rebut the drug screening, meaning that if the employer did a test, you can go pay for another test that shows that you were not impaired, because there's a difference. You could have smoked, but you're not impaired. You could have ingested a gummy, but you're not impaired. It matters, right? Yeah. And so you have the ability to go in and rebut that test. Of course, it has to be a verified test. Don't go get the one from Walmart. That's not going to be a valid test. It has to be verified by someone that says that this is the truth and this didn't happen. So there's a 30-day window if they screen you and it comes back positive, because it can be in your system and you know that you're not high. So that was a very interesting piece. We managed to get it out. It almost died a couple of times, but William kept making me keep going, because it was a very hard piece of legislation to try to get through, because we're still conservative. And we see, although it's lawful, it's a moral question for a lot of us about how this works and what's going to go on. Another really great bill that is super important was Assembly Bill 416. So you know how when we get these traffic fines and people ended up with their license suspended, and they get it on a credit report, you're like, this is a traffic violation. Why is it on my credit report? So we passed a bill that basically prevents a state or local agency from reporting that delinquency to a credit reporting agency. It also prevents them from suspending your driver's license if you don't have the ability to pay. Now, if you do have the ability to pay, they can do a couple of things. They can suspend it if they prove that you have the ability to pay the amount and you willfully avoided the payment. So that's two different things. I knew I had the money and I decided not to pay it. But if you go through the indigency process where you prove that you don't, they can't suspend it, because typically what happens is they suspend it, then it goes to DMV, DMV picks you up, then you have the insurance and all these other things that get suspended, and it's just this triple effect. And so we were trying to cut that off, right, and prevent people from, for a simple traffic violation, number one, going to jail, right? And so the bill started off really heavy, and of course, as all Democrats fight amongst each other, this is what moved. And so it's still a good first step. We're not done, but at least making sure that it can't be suspended if you prove that you didn't have the ability to pay and you're on a payment plan. And so if you have a delinquent fine or administrative assessment or fee owed, that it deems, if they can't collect it, then after 8 years, then it's just deemed uncollectible, because what they've been doing is holding on to it forever. And it's in the system as a delinquency, and you can be pulled over and you're like, man, I remember this bill, it's like 10 years ago. And so, but it's still in the system. And so that was another good piece of legislation that moved. And I want to talk to you guys about something else, because I really want you to use where you are right now to start getting engaged in the process. To me, freedom matters, because now we're at a stage where you have a voice and you can go out and you can speak to these issues. So everybody's familiar with the Nevada Sentencing Commission, right? So I want you to write this date down. So if you're not doing anything else, August 29th at 9 a.m., the Sentencing Commission now has to identify variables and sets of data that they are not collecting around criminal justice. Why does this matter? Because we're trying to figure out where the discrimination is happening, where are the gaps and what are the problems, right? How are we treating individuals? Is it disparate? Is it unequal? And so this is an opportunity to go to the Sentencing Commission on August 29th at 9 a.m. Their agenda is the data they're going to collect. Their agenda is the sentencing impact statements, and you get a chance to go in public comment and say what you understand to be the irregularities or the problems within what we collect around criminal justice, what we collect around people who've been incarcerated, the impact statements. There's several things on the agenda, but I want to move you toward an empowering position. You have a say, right? Because if you have a direct experience, what better way to express that and put that in a public forum? And to let the legislators and judges and attorneys who sit on that sentencing commission to hear your opinion.
Whom you can now vote.
And who you can now vote for or against. But to go there and literally have a say. And I think it's super important, because something that we found out in the session, it was really with the parole board, that I probably shouldn't recite this one, but we found out that there were some issues in terms of when a person was going for the parole board, there was this secretary that had a lot of power that seemed to be deciding up and down who was in and who was out, and we couldn't figure out where she got that power from and why she was wielding it the way that she was. It was just like, I don't believe that you in particular are supposed to have this level of authority over who decides which case is actually reviewed. Literally, it was like the single human that was just deciding what happened, and she was the secretary. And we were like, you know her name? Wow. Okay. Well, that came to our attention during the session, and we're effectively trying to deal with that and balance that power out, because it was being used and it was not being used appropriately.
So you have to get permission for an email, and all that, to get ID from Department of Education.
Wow. What's your name?
Adam Combs.
Adam, okay.
Can you say, I'm sorry,
Adam Combs.
can you say that one more
Adam
time?
Combs.
About the.
Oh, he was, I don't have it. Can you, he wants to hear you say that louder.
You have to get an email when you want ID from the state, when you've been incarcerated, to get ID for free, or you're a one-time prisoner, you know what I'm talking about, we all know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
To prove that, if you don't have an ID and you're not somebody, and you're not, you can't prove, you don't have your United States ID or whatever, you call her up on the phone, she will send you an electronic email that's supposed to have her electronic stamp or whatever, and she'll send it to whoever you need to prove that that's who you are, as long as she verifies who you are through whatever means you brought it. I was just getting what was on, coming out of Casa Grande, was able to prove I was still in the prison system, otherwise, it was up to her when she wanted to do it.
Okay, well, then that's pretty accurate, because that's what we learned in the session. Like, we realized, we didn't even see that. But I'm gonna
I
let,
might even have that email still.
yeah, definitely. I do want to see that. But Assembly Bill 10, I'm gonna let Assemblyman McCurdy talk about this, because it directly relates to what we moved around the photo identification card.
So now, it is state law that essentially states that a photo identification card be issued by the Nevada Department of Corrections to an offender who is to be released, that clearly indicates whether, it clearly indicates your name, age, your full name, age, and it also clearly states how you can utilize the card, whether you're going to be utilizing it to apply for a driver's license, identification card, etc. It is going to now be required that upon notification of release, they be provided with cards that will provide who they are, name, date, information. So that has been addressed this legislative session as well, so you don't have those hoops to go through as of July 1st of 2020.
I had to argue this point, the same point with the sheriff's office and the DMV. These are the same people that are watching you and counting you in bed, and the same people that are working at the DMV. It's the sheriff's office. Your sheriff's office is your back number in jail. Same people. So the same guy that's been counting me for the past 6 months, and they switched shifts, and now he's down at the DMV, can't tell me that I'm the same guy. He can count me as I'm in the county, as a who I am, and verify me there. But he can't tell me that's who I am not 2 months ago when you were counting me up in the county. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Same people, same office, they're the same people working, doing the same job.
So, to be clear, it is now state law that they absolutely have to provide that identification card once they have notification that you are to be released. State law. So you won't have those hoops to jump through just to provide your information as to who you are. Yes, sir.
That's the same law applies for those that coming from an interstate compact from another state to the state of Nevada.
Say that.
Does it apply to the interstate compact when they come from out of state? The driver's license.
I would have to get clarification on that, but it definitely applies to voter registration.
But for the ID.
Yeah, that's I have to check. So we'll check on that and we'll provide follow-up information to Mr. Ponder.
Well, just one last one. So one thing I definitely want to bring up, because I know that you guys are sometimes going through a lot, but I want to just bring up this being active in the process again, because we're just getting ready to start our interim committees, right? And so if there's issues that for criminal justice going forward in 2021, 2 years from now, that you want to bring forward, the Nevada Commission on, it's the Advisory Commission on Justice, which is probably going to be chaired by Steve Yeager, who's our current chairman. I want you guys to participate and show up, because this is it's kind of like the big committee that covers all of the criminal justice issues. And it is the time when you can bring up an issue that we need to study, that we need to bring a bill for.
It's very important.
Literally. You can sit at the table in public comment and say, well, I think that the state should be looking at this, and they should move a law around this. That is literally the moment. And it goes on for 2 years where we sit and we think about what it is that are the issues we want to bring forward. And I want to tell you that even if you feel like, and I hope you don't feel that this way, that I want you to feel that that your voice matters and that whatever you say is actually going to be given value. Because every time we hear from real people, it matters. It matters to us because it helps us to figure out, are we moving this in the right direction? Are we moving in theory, or are we moving in a practical way, right? Because we want real change, and we want change that actually is going to touch you, not be theoretical, not be this mystical thing that's out there. You're like, I don't understand how this works, I don't understand how this applies to me. It actually needs to help you, right? And so the purpose of showing up at those committee meetings, you don't have to stay there the whole time. You just go for public comment. If you can't make it at the beginning, come at the end for public comment, and then say what you feel needs to happen. It's okay to say your story, and then just put it on us to move that needle. And I'm saying that to you because I say it everywhere, but I really want you guys to get engaged in this process. Criminal justice reform is not over. We just got a lot of things out this session that were impactful, but we're not done. There were a lot of bills that we had to water down in order to move, but that doesn't mean that we don't want the highest and best change around criminal justice reform. And I just want to import that upon you because I really, really want you guys to show up. And that may be 15 minutes out of your day to be present and just to say what you need to say to us, the legislators.
So these were just a few pieces of legislation that were passed this legislative session around criminal justice reform. There were many other bills that were passed. We had one bill that was literally 160 pages of straight just changes. I mean, dealing from everything to looking at, how we're sentencing, prioritization of who gets which beds, the entire gamut. All that work that was done this past legislative session was done because of interim committees. The exact same committees that Assemblywoman Neal, she's describing that you should attend and have your voice be heard. We had a lot of feedback from former offenders during that last interim committee hearing. And the result was a lot of policy that we're talking about today. So we collectively, all of us, collectively, we can create the changes that we want to see in the system, because guess what? Right now, we have a legislative body that understands that criminal justice reform is needed, that understands that we have to look at alternative sentencing practices for low-level, nonviolent offenders, that understands that we have to do things differently. And to top it off, we also have a governor in Steve Sisolak and a committee that is chaired by Steve Yeager in Judiciary that actually wants to see positive change around criminal justice reform. So we actually have to get together, put our minds together, because we don't have all the answers, but we do have the power to push the button to vote yes. So we need all of us to come together to make that positive change that we so desperately want to see. So if you say, hey, this is a problem that should change, bring that to us, let's change it. Let's work together to make change in the system, because it's not perfect. But we have the people that are in place right now that want to change it. So now what we'll do is we'll open it up for Q&A. What we will ask is that you just state your name, where you're from, and ask the question, and we'll try our best to provide an answer. And we'll do it in